Welcome to another session of Being at Home During COVID with George, and I'm excited to be here. And as usual, I like to talk about the idea of creating the possibility of embracing the hurt, the pain, the frustration, and still generating the hope. And so this week, it's interesting because I'd like to talk about resilience, this idea of being able to work through obstacles and difficulty in a way that it actually enhances our feelings about ourselves is what they call strong self-efficacy belief. And the way we achieve that is through sustained effort. It's not something where there's a struggle involved. It's something that has to be done multiple times. There's ups and downs. And so that's what I'd like to talk about because I believe we've been going through this for 7 months, and some of us even before that, depending on our life situation and circumstance. And so last week I talked about being rooted or seeing, I had this situation with a tree in my backyard that was hanging on by its roots. And when I talked to you last week, I had made arrangements for an outfit to come and remove my tree the next morning because it was a challenging situation because I had one vendor come over and he said that he couldn't do it because it wasn't an emergency. In other words, emergency was if the tree was on my house or on my car. And so he couldn't do it. And so I ended up hiring this one outfit. And then so I was excited and expecting things to be over by Friday afternoon. As Friday morning came and it didn't work out, the guy wasn't prepared to do the job and everything. And then I had to begin again, knowing that it was going to be a challenge. And so I called a friend of mine. He gave me numbers of outfits that remove trees, and I made several calls. And each of the outfits, we're talking about one outfit said they had 300 calls on the 2 days before. So there was no way they could get to me before November. Then another outfit said the same thing. And then another outfit never responded to my email, even though I sent them the pictures. So I was very organized and that sort of thing. And then it dawned on me that I had to reset. I had to go back and call some of the people I called before. And there was one young man that I had called before, and he said he'd get back to me. Meanwhile, I ended up going on to Angie's List and making more calls. And I got a person, but he wanted to charge me an arm and a leg, and he couldn't do it for 2 weeks. And so I said, okay. So I'll schedule you in for Wednesday. So he said he would cut it. He could cut down the time, but he had to charge me a lot of money. So I said, okay. Well, with that, then in the meantime, this is Friday, started at 7 in the morning. This is 8 o'clock at night, and I've made multiple calls and a lot of, I won't call them rejections, but a lot of people saying they couldn't do anything because even though it was an emergency for me, it wasn't an emergency for them. And so at 8:30, I'm thinking, okay, I got this one guy coming, and I just kind of was chilling. And then the guy called me and said, hey, we can come over. We can take the tree down on Sunday. And so that's what we're going to do. And I said, okay, I'm going to go with that because I need the tree down sooner or later. And he came and he took the tree down on Sunday, but yet he wasn't finished because he had to do more stuff. So he just finished yesterday. But the whole point was that I had to work through all these obstacles and these difficulties, these challenges, and the frustration of feeling powerless, knowing that I couldn't do anything. I had to rely on other people, and it was a huge tree, and you had to have the amount of equipment and so on. And so I had to go through that. And so as I reflect on it, and I talk about this all the time, one of the reasons it took sustained effort for me to overcome these obstacles and these challenges. And for some people, they say, well, that's not much of a challenge. Yeah, maybe for other people it wasn't, just like it wasn't an emergency for some people. But for me, it was an emergency. The tree could fall with a gust of wind. And then that Saturday, before they came on Sunday, it was windy. So my neighbor knocked on my door and said, hey, where's the tree coming down? So there was there was a sense of urgency, and I got through it. And the reason I got through it was because I wasn't reacting to the situation, even though I did react a little bit by being frustrated, but I didn't really act it out. So to be resilient, it just means, okay, I got knocked down on Friday morning. I had to get back up and reset. And so being resilient means to react to things rather than responding to things. And so it's about creating space between stimulus and response, because when I react, there's no space and I'm just acting out and just going for the first thing, or just it's just not helpful to be in that space. And to be resilient, we have to respond. And the responding, or the ability to create space between stimulus and response, has everything to do with understanding that I was coming from a growth mode, which meant, okay, what's the lesson here? What do I need to do? Stay on task, persistent in effort. But I was creating effort with understanding how things might work, or working towards possibilities, rather than just withdrawing energy, being in survival mode, where I'm either going to fight, flee, or withdraw energy. I had to stay open. And so creating space between stimulus and response is this process of generating hope, looking at, okay, this is what's happening. What can I do to have an impact? What are my choices? And the idea is not to withdraw energy, but to bring more energy, more intelligence, more awareness, to make more phone calls. And so being able to do that, and understanding that, being in a growth mindset, and being in love or positivity, rather than being in survival mode, even though I was in survival mode, but to stay open. And when I did close, to open back up, and things were able to get done. And so why is this important? Because I feel like we've been doing this since March 1st, when I came back from California. And we've been in this time of COVID, and we were expecting, after a couple of months, we'll be back to school, back to work, back to traveling, back to being able to do things, being out with people without a mask. And we're 7 months into it, and there's no signs that we're going to be able to do what we normally been doing, because we're still, some of us are going to school, but then we have to close down. So it's a metaphor for, we have to find a way or create space between stimulus and response. So we're responding to COVID, which is, we're generating hope, and we're approaching in a way where we don't quit, we don't withdraw energy, we keep the persistent effort, and we stay hopeful, and we stay optimistic about what's going to happen. It's not happening like we like, and we have people and places that can help. It's similar to the organizations that remove trees, that don't seem to think that this is an emergency, don't seem to think that it's not an emergency for us. For them, it's not really an emergency, because if it was, they'd be they'd be responding, instead of just ignoring or denying that there's a problem. And so that can engender, for myself, a strong sense of frustration and even anger, because they're not stepping up and doing their job. They're not responding to me like that, the tree companies weren't. But that means we have to be consistent, and we have to keep asking and keep expecting our needs to be met. And even though we might feel powerless, we have power. We can always choose who we vote for, who we go, who we communicate with. We communicate with people. We keep saying, this is an emergency for us, and we have to generate the hope. We have to embrace the hurt, but still generate the hope. And that's where resilience comes from. And I've been through this throughout my entire life, and I know that when I can make it through obstacles, when we make it through this time of COVID, we're going to be stronger than we were before, and we're going to be more resourceful, more resilient. And that is because we are not reacting, we're responding, we're creating space between stimulus and response, and we're recognizing, when I'm in survival mode, how do I get out of survival mode, where I'm in growth mode, where I can say, okay, I don't like this, I'm angry, but what can I do? And the thing I can do is to keep searching, keep asking, keep demanding that my needs get met, or make my voice heard. And if one person doesn't hear me, then I go to the next person or go to the next agency. And so we have to do that. But collectively, I feel like we're doing this as well, because one way of getting resilient is mastering difficulty and obstacles. But another way is sharing it with each other and saying that if I can do it, you can do it. If I can do it with the tree, I can do it with COVID. and vice versa. And the other thing is we just have to stay strong. We need to support each other. That's one reason I'm doing these being at home with George during COVID, because it's my way of saying, okay, how can we embrace all the challenges and still generate hope and still find a modicum of control, so we don't feel as powerless as we would feel if we didn't have anything and we're through energy, we're in survival mode, where we're either fighting or we're fleeing or we're spacing out. And we're just staying open and asking the question, what's the lesson here? What can I control? What do I need to do? And so for me, being during this time of COVID, is being able to do the things that I wouldn't be able to do if I was traveling. Like focusing on my inner life, making the shift from being to doing. So in spite of all this, can I still be kind? Can I still be loving? Can I still be curious? Can I still be interested in helping somebody beyond myself, so that we all are in this together? We get beyond this illusion of separateness and realize that we are all in this. And if we feel that way, there's no way we would let people suffer and be more focused on things that have nothing to do with sustaining life and sustaining the well-being of the populace.